it's very long. It's 7 minutes long, which is really too long for a reading generally, for contemporary audiences and, say, worship in a congregation. It pushes the outer limits of endurance for reading, and so telling it has the feeling of much faster time than the reading. The story is such a great story, and it plays so well in the telling that even though many of the stories of the Gospel of John are fraught with dialogue, they're dialogue heavy, including this one. I think the experience of it told argues for some kind of roots in oral culture of this and other stories from the Gospel of John, in the same way that, the dialogues of Socrates worked in the memory of Plato. The story, of course, centers on the conflict between the man who was born blind and the Pharisees. The intensity of the conflict is really spiced with humor and irony. This is a kind of classic "who do you think you are" reversal drama in which the nobody triumphs over the somebodies. The working of the miracle elicits energy and excitement, so the arc of the telling goes that way, so to speak. I hear in the words, "I went and I washed and I came back seeing," something of the rhythmic formula, "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." Well, in the excitement, the man born blind is unable to answer the question, "Where is he?" which carries echoes of other questions in John's narrative, such as, "Rabbi, where are you staying?" And "You know the place where I am going. Where I am going, you cannot come." The phrase, "Now it was the Sabbath day," is tinged with a kind of knowing, a kind of subtext being expressed. So the audience knows that Jesus is in trouble, that this happens on the Sabbath. I try to portray the blind man's gradual dawning awareness of who Jesus is with each successive utterance, as he becomes more bold with each utterance. The way in which he gradually comes to see echoes, to my mind, Peter's response to Jesus when Jesus asks the disciples if they want to go away as well as all of the other people who are abandoning him. And Peter responds by saying, "We have believed and have come to know who Jesus is." It's a kind of a slow growing awareness that begins with the invitation of Jesus to the disciples in the first chapter, "Come and see." I think one of the funniest moments in the story is the moment in which the parents are interrogated by the Pharisees. I mean, their response is somewhat inane, and so I portray it that way. "We know this is our son, and that he was born blind. But how he's come to see now, this we do not know." The parents are afraid of the authorities, and so they're trying to give an answer that will satisfy, but they really don't have any clue as to the real issue involved, how the man has come to see. So the humor of the moment is heightened somewhat by the pause just before the parents say, "But he's old enough, ask him," as if this is somehow to shift the attention away from them and get them off the hook. It always gets a laugh when I tell that. And I think it's meant to be humorous. I think that this reversal of fortune around which the story operates is at base a funny thing. The Pharisees pursue the issue of Jesus' identity ruthlessly. And while the interrogated, formerly blind man is interrogated, he gradually comes to an understanding of who Jesus is. Telling the story gives us the opportunity to highlight the Pharisees' frustration at the lack of progress of their kind of draconian methods of interrogation, expressing exasperation by repeating the question they've essentially already asked. I mean, they've run out of questions at this point. They don't know what more to ask him. They are not getting anywhere. So they say to him, and I fumble as I say this, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" It sets up the blind man's response, which is a slam dunk in the conflict, as the blind man turns the tables on the Pharisees, on his interrogators, and asks them, "I've told you before. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to be his disciples too?" Now, I've chosen to speak this line somewhat ambiguously. Is the blind man really aware of the gotcha that's going on here? Is it something of a passive-aggressive response? Or is he completely innocent and speaking words that only the audience hears in this way? Well, finally, the Pharisees just kind of explode or implode with frustration and anger. "You are his disciple." And they set themselves up for the final indictment and expression of amazement that those who claim to know it all actually know nothing at all. I've chosen to render the blind man's theological excursus on sin with a kind of flavor of sarcasm, a tongue-in-cheek critique of blindness as punishment for sin, a critique that I think is strongly implied by Jesus' dismissal of the disciples' question, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, so that he was born blind?" So the man born blind becomes more emboldened, and he actually proclaims the good news and finally answers the question of Jesus' identity with the pronouncement on his own terms, "If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do anything." Now, the only response available to the Pharisees at that point, if they are not allowing themselves to be persuaded by the emergingly eloquent argument of the man born blind, the only option of them left is essentially the exercise of their authority, the bringing to bear of violence, and so they throw him out. And I think that has to be a dramatic moment, because it's really the supreme expression of their willing disbelief, their unwillingness to listen and to learn anything from a nobody. And so they resort to the violence of throwing him out. It's a violent act and enacted that way. But the pronouncement of Jesus in the coda to this episode completes the drama. It is a passing of judgment, to my way of thinking, on all those who exercise their understanding of God in an all or nothing, believe this way or else, kind of exclusive dogmatic lockbox that admits of no humility whatsoever. Given the way in which John's Gospel's theology is often wrongly, I believe, construed as kind of absolutist or exclusivist, it's telling, I think, in the end, that the story becomes a passionate appeal for tolerance and humility in pronouncing the kind of judgmental certainty about who's in and who's out. The issue is rather about finding opportunities to do the works of God while it is still day.